In the summer of 1983, in the quiet town of Montvale, Belgium, a family of 5 walked into the Saint Verena Historical Museum, a place known for its peculiar underground architecture and wartime relics. It was an ordinary visit on a sunny afternoon. Yet, by dusk, none of them would be seen again. The Devereux family, consisting of schoolteacher Martin, his wife Eloise, and their 3 children, Jonas, 15, Clara, 11, and Paul, 8, had come to explore the museum's latest exhibit, the Forgotten Tunnels of the Resistance, a newly restored series of underground chambers said to have been used by soldiers during World War II. Witnesses recalled seeing the family descend a narrow staircase behind the glass display room around 2:17 p.m. The guard on duty swore he heard laughter echoing from below. Then silence. The museum closed at 6 p.m. When staff realized the Devereux family had not checked out, they assumed they'd slipped out unnoticed. By nightfall, their car was still parked outside, keys, purse, and a half-eaten sandwich inside. Police arrived. The underground passages were searched for hours. There were no footprints, no signs of struggle, and no trace of the family. 40 years later, locals still whisper about what lies beneath that museum. Some say the tunnels go far deeper than anyone knew. Others believe the family uncovered something meant to stay hidden. If you're new here, hit subscribe, because what you're about to hear isn't just another disappearance. It's a descent into something far older and darker than history itself. The Saint Verena Historical Museum stood at the edge of Montvale like a relic from another century. Once a Benedictine monastery, its towering stone facade and vaulted arches were the kind of architecture that seemed to hum with its own history. Locals passed it daily, barely glancing at the weathered gargoyles or the ivy crawling up its side. But to the Devereux family, it was more than a landmark. It was a promise of adventure. Martin Devereux, a 42-year-old history teacher at Montvale Secondary, had a lifelong fascination with wartime Europe. When he heard the museum was reopening a sealed section of tunnels believed to have been used by resistance fighters during World War II, he couldn't resist bringing his family. His wife, Eloise, a librarian with an eye for the strange and poetic, shared his curiosity. Their 3 children, Jonas, Clara, and little Paul, were thrilled to spend a summer day exploring real underground caves. That morning, they arrived at 10:45 a.m. sharp. The parking lot shimmered under the Belgian sun as tourists trickled in, cameras slung around their necks. Inside, the museum was cool and dim. The air smelled faintly of damp stone and old varnish. Wooden signs pointed visitors toward the new exhibition. The Forgotten Tunnels of 1943, opening week. At the ticket counter, Martin made a small joke to the clerk, "Let's hope the tunnels aren't haunted." The clerk, an older man with glassy eyes, smiled too long before replying, "If they are, monsieur, they prefer to be left alone." The Devereux family joined a guided group tour through the main galleries, rows of rusted rifles, cracked helmets, and faded letters behind glass. The children whispered questions while Eloise translated the plaques written in Old French. Everything seemed ordinary until they reached a heavy iron door at the far end of the east corridor. A red velvet rope blocked it off. A sign read, "Access restricted, staff only." But as the tour moved on, Jonas noticed something. The door wasn't locked. The latch hung loose, slightly ajar, as if someone had forgotten to seal it. He whispered to his father, "Dad, look, it's open." Martin hesitated. He knew better. But curiosity was his weakness. He pressed the door open just enough to see a spiral staircase descending into darkness. Cool air rushed up from below, tinged with the scent of wet earth. Eloise frowned, uneasy. "Let's stay with the group," she said softly. "Just a peek," Martin replied, already holding his flashlight from his satchel. They waited for the footsteps of the tour group to fade, then slipped beneath the velvet rope, one by one. Jonas went first, holding the beam steady. Clara followed, holding Paul's hand. Eloise and Martin came last, whispering reassurances. The sound of their shoes on stone echoed faintly as they descended. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The walls narrowed, carved from damp limestone, marked with faded chalk symbols. The faint hum of electric lights above faded until only the flashlight's thin cone of light pierced the dark. At 30 steps down, they reached a landing. It opened into a corridor lined with archways, some bricked shut, others leading into small chambers filled with remnants of rusted machinery and crates marked with wartime insignias. "This must have been an old storage area," Martin murmured, voice trembling with excitement. Eloise tried to smile, but her nerves betrayed her. "Martin, this isn't part of the tour. We should go back before someone notices." Jonas panned the flashlight around, revealing something peculiar, an open wooden crate containing several unlabeled glass jars. Inside them, thick amber liquid preserved what looked like scraps of cloth, and something else. Tiny, pale fragments that could have been bone. Then they heard it. A clang. Metal striking stone, faint but distinct, echoing from deeper within the corridor. Paul gasped and clutched his mother's arm. "Probably a pipe," Martin said quickly, though his eyes betrayed doubt. "These tunnels are old." Still, he moved forward, driven by that dangerous mixture of curiosity and disbelief. Every few feet, he marked their path with a line of chalk on the wall, an old habit he'd learned from cave explorers. When they reached a fork, Eloise turned to look back. The faint light from the staircase was gone. Total darkness behind them. She took a step toward it and realized the air was shifting, drafts moving in directions that didn't make sense, like the tunnels were breathing. "Martin, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Let's go back." But just then, a sound drifted from the left tunnel, a soft crying noise, like a child. Jonas froze. "Paul." Paul shook his head. "It's coming from over there," Jonas whispered. Martin hesitated, but the sound grew louder. Against all reason, they followed it. The corridor curved sharply and opened into a wide chamber lined with broken statues and collapsed beams. In the center lay a trapdoor, slightly open, air whispering out from the darkness below. The crying stopped. Martin crouched, aiming the flashlight downward. A stone stairway disappeared into what looked like another level, older, rougher, carved by hand rather than tools. The smell changed too, earthy, metallic, almost like rusted blood. "Martin," Eloise started, her voice shaking. He turned to her, flashlight trembling. "It's just another section. We'll take a quick look, then we go back." Those were the last words anyone heard from the Devereux family. By evening, when museum staff performed their closing rounds, the east corridor was empty. The rope remained untouched, the iron door still slightly ajar. The flashlight was later found on the third step, its battery drained, beams still faintly glowing when the first guard entered. No footprints. No voices. No family. Only the faint smell of wet stone and something else, like candle wax, long burned out. Hours passed before anyone realized something was wrong. The museum closed its heavy oak doors at 6 o'clock sharp, as it had every day for decades. Visitors filed out, chattering about the tunnels and relics. But the Devereux family's car still sat in the parking lot, engine cold, picnic basket on the seat, the youngest child's toy dinosaur resting near the window. By 7:30 p.m., the last security guard, Henri Leclerc, began his nightly sweep. Henri was a veteran of the museum, gray-haired, slow-moving, but proud of his routines. He knew every hallway, every exhibit, every door that creaked a second too long. When he reached the east corridor, he noticed something that made him stop cold. The iron door to the restricted tunnel stood slightly open. A faint, musty breeze brushed his face. "Not again," he muttered, assuming a careless staff member had left it unlatched. He pulled out his flashlight and stepped inside, intending to shut it after a quick check. The beam of light caught the chalk marks on the wall. Lines, fresh, white, drawn by human hand. Henry's chest tightened. He called out, "Hello? Museum personnel." His voice echoed down the spiral staircase and dissolved into a hush that felt wrong. At the bottom of the stairs, the tunnel opened into a corridor. The smell hit first, wet limestone mixed with something metallic. Henry's beam flickered over the floor. There were faint scuff marks, like shoes dragging on dust-covered stone. He followed them, pulse thudding in his ears. The corridor turned, and the beam caught something glinting on the floor, a bracelet. A delicate silver band with a small blue charm. It was later confirmed to belong to Eloise Devereux. Henri knelt to pick it up, heart pounding. Just then, from deeper in the tunnel, he heard a sound, a distant knock, 3 times in steady rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. He froze, listening. Nothing. Then again, slower this time. Knock, knock. Henri called out, "Who's there?" His voice bounced through the corridor, growing thinner with each echo. There was no answer. When he turned to leave, something brushed past the beam of his flashlight, a faint movement, too quick to focus on. He stumbled backward, nearly dropping the bracelet. "I'm not staying down here," he whispered, and scrambled up the stairs, sealing the door behind him. He filed an incident report but downplayed what he'd heard. "Possible trespassers," he wrote. But when the morning shift arrived, the Devereux family's absence became undeniable. By noon, Montvale police had cordoned off the museum. Reporters gathered outside as officers combed every visible inch of the building. Divers, engineers, and even a geological team were brought in. The tunnels beneath Saint Verena stretched further than anyone expected, down into areas not listed on any blueprint. Chief Inspector Lucien Gault led the search. He was a pragmatic man, skeptical of ghost stories but unnerved by the museum's layout. "It's like a labyrinth," he said to his partner, flashing his light across a wall covered in strange chalk symbols, circles within circles, lines intersecting in geometric patterns. "These weren't drawn by our people," his partner replied. "They look old." The first search team reached the same landing where Henri had found the bracelet. They marked the area and descended further. But something was off. Compasses spun aimlessly. Radios crackled with static. Even flashlights dimmed intermittently, though their batteries were new. At 2:13 p.m., one of the officers, Sergeant Moreau, reported a draft coming from below. "Feels like open air," he said over the radio. "Could be another chamber." Then, nothing. The transmission cut off. When the team found him minutes later, he was standing alone in the corridor, his face pale, eyes unfocused. "What happened?" Gault asked. Moreau blinked. I heard someone call my name." "Who?" He swallowed. "A child." Sounded like it came from inside the wall. The tunnels were sealed that evening for safety reasons, but rumors spread fast. Locals whispered that the museum had been built atop a crypt, possibly older than the monastery itself. Some said the tunnels once connected to Roman catacombs that ran for miles under the city, long abandoned and undocumented. A week later, when the police reopened the site for a second search, they discovered something the first team had missed. Behind one of the bricked archways lay a narrow gap, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Beyond it was a descending spiral carved directly into the stone, primitive, uneven, unrecorded. At the bottom, they found remnants of wooden scaffolding, burned-out candles, and scraps of parchment bearing inscriptions in Latin. The most legible fragment read, "Non debet tangi. Clauditor. It must not be touched. It is sealed." The find made headlines, but the Devereux family's whereabouts remained a mystery. Public interest waned after a few months. The museum quietly closed for renovation. Yet locals claimed that on quiet nights, if you stood outside the east wall, you could hear faint knocks echoing through the stone. 3 knocks. Always 3. And sometimes, if the wind was still, a voice like a child calling for help. Nearly 6 months after the disappearance, the Saint Verena Museum remained sealed to the public. Officially, the closure was due to structural instability, but everyone in Montvale knew the real reason: the Devereux family. The case had gone cold. Police reports sat in dusty folders. Journalists moved on. But one person hadn't. Eloise's sister, Marguerite Lefebvre, refused to accept silence. She had grown up with Eloise in Montvale and knew her better than anyone. When the police stopped searching, she started her own investigation. Marguerite was methodical. She collected every article, every floor plan, every interview. Her tiny flat became a shrine of sorts: newspaper clippings taped to walls, photographs pinned with red string. The name Saint Verena appeared everywhere, circled in ink. One evening, she received an unexpected call. The voice on the other end was shaky, male, elderly. "Madame Lefebvre." "Yes." "This is Etienne Moreau. I was an archivist at Saint Verena before it became a museum. I think I can help you." Marguerite's heart pounded. "Help me? With what?" "The tunnels," he said. "They shouldn't have opened them." The next day, Marguerite met Etienne in a small café near the river. He looked frail, hands trembling, eyes darting toward the window every few seconds. On the table, he laid a rolled parchment, yellowed with age. "This," he said, unrolling it carefully, "is the original blueprint of Saint Verena's foundations, drawn before the monastery was converted." Marguerite leaned closer. The diagram was complex, showing a network of chambers and stairways. But one section, deep beneath the east wing, was crossed out with red ink. Over it was written in Latin, "Scala ad nihilum," the staircase to nothing. Etienne's voice dropped to a whisper. "They told us it led nowhere. But I was a young man then, and I saw the workers. They sealed it for a reason." "Why?" Marguerite asked. He hesitated. "Because the monks who built this place claimed the lower chambers were not theirs. They found them when digging foundations in the 12th century. Older tunnels, older than the church itself. They tried to map them, but the layout kept changing. Walls shifted. Passages appeared and disappeared." Marguerite frowned. "You mean like a labyrinth?" Etienne nodded. "A living one." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather-bound journal. This belonged to Father Augustine, the last monk to document the underground. He wrote of voices that spoke without mouths and light that moves without flame. Marguerite read the entry, her blood running cold. "We sealed the staircase to nothing. What lies below is not the work of men. The air whispers of judgment, and those who descend do not return the same." Etienne's hand shook as he pointed to a final note scribbled in the margin. "If the seal is ever broken, the museum will not hold." He looked up, eyes glassy. "Your sister and her family didn't just disappear, Madame Lefebvre. They went where the earth itself remembers." Before Marguerite could ask more, Etienne glanced at the window again, then froze. His eyes widened. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Outside, the street was quiet, only the faint tolling of church bells. But Etienne rose abruptly, gathering his papers. "I shouldn't have come. They listen when you speak of it." "Who?" Marguerite demanded. He didn't answer. He stumbled out of the café, leaving behind one thing, the parchment blueprint. That night, Marguerite studied the map again. Her finger traced the red X marking the staircase to nothing. It aligned exactly with the area where the Devereux family had last been seen. The East Corridor. Driven by desperation, she contacted Inspector Galt, now retired. After a long silence, he agreed to meet her. "I shouldn't even talk about that place," Galt said, lighting a cigarette. "But I'll tell you this. We heard things down there that no one wrote in the report." "Like what?" He exhaled smoke slowly. Whispering. My men thought it was the wind through the stones, but it wasn't random. It was words. French, Latin. Sometimes a child's laugh. Marguerite's hand trembled. You think they're still there? Gault stared at her for a long moment. If they are, they're not the same. The following week, Marguerite made a decision that would change everything. She forged an entry permit using the museum's old logo and entered the building at night, slipping past the guards. The halls were silent, her footsteps echoing off marble floors. At the east corridor, the iron door stood chained, a large warning sign bolted to it. Danger! Do not enter. She cut the chain with a bolt cutter she'd brought. The door groaned open. A cold draft swept through the hallway. She switched on her flashlight and began her descent. The air was damp, heavy with earth and decay. The chalk marks from the first search team were still visible, but faded. As she passed the spot where Eloise's bracelet had been found, she paused, whispering her sister's name. Eloise. Silence. Then, faintly, from below, a sound. It was a child humming. Her flashlight flickered. The air seemed to pulse, breathing against her skin. Every step downward felt wrong, as if gravity itself shifted. The tunnel narrowed, pressing closer. At the end of the corridor, she saw it, the trapdoor. It was half open, as if waiting. Marguerite's breath caught. Her light fell upon a small handprint smeared on the stone beside it, too small to be an adult's. And faintly, from below, came a whisper. We found the staircase. The story of the Devereux family is one that refuses to fade. Official records mark them as missing, unsolved, a cautionary footnote in Montvale's history. But beneath the streets and the museum's stone foundations, the truth remains hidden, a secret older than the town itself, older than the monastery, and perhaps older than human memory. Over the decades, countless investigators, archivists, and urban explorers have tried to unravel the mystery of the staircase to nothing, yet every attempt ends the same way: confusion, fear, and unanswered questions. The tunnels seem alive, shifting when no one is watching. Whispers echo through stone that refuses to stay still. And always, the three knocks, soft, deliberate, unrelenting, remind the world of what lies beneath. Those who descended the staircase speak of voices, shadows, and things that imitate life but are not alive. Even now, locals insist that the east corridor is not empty, that the Devereux family waits somewhere in the dark, transformed by the labyrinth beneath Saint Verena. Every exploration, every reopening, risks reopening a door that was never meant to be opened. History remembers the family as lost. But legend, whispers, and the occasional recording suggest a far darker reality. Some places, and some secrets, do not want to be discovered. So, if you ever find yourself near an old museum, a bricked-up corridor, or a forgotten staircase leading down into stone, think twice. Not every mystery is meant to be solved. And sometimes, the ones who vanish are not gone, they are still waiting, beneath the floor, listening. If you enjoyed this story and want more mysteries that blur the line between history and horror, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and join us as we uncover the world's most chilling disappearances, one story at a time.